Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Fight Critic here to give you guys another video. First and foremost, shout out to the Lions Den boxing community, and shout out to everybody out there taking time out of their day to watch this video. Um, so this morning, I normally get up every morning roughly around 5:30, 5:40 a.m. And normally the time that I would get up around this time in the morning, I would normally go about my day as getting ready, going to the gym, and working out. But this morning I felt like a fucking train just like hit me. And I know for many people, the first thing that you're probably going to think about is, oh my God, is it COVID? No, I'm just somebody who, like me and very few people who watch these videos, I tend to, let them, be part of, the social media handles that I use in my personal life, would know that I am a bit of a crazy person when it comes to the gym. And it has absolutely nothing to do with any sort of competition or X, Y, and Z. I just enjoy picking up heavy things. And yesterday was a very intense leg day, which also finished up with a kettlebell squat thruster ladder. And for many people who either do some sort of CrossFit or follow CrossFit in general, you can probably piece together what that kind of like figures itself out to be when I said that. So yeah, I feel really shitty today. So I woke up, went to my bodega around the corner, got me some spicy noodles, which normally I tend to eat when I'm not feeling well, and came back, took 2 Benadryl, washed it down with some NyQuil so I can go back to sleep. And I thought that I would feel better when I woke up again. And I woke up maybe about 2 hours ago. And no, because I get to wake up to the news that Floyd Mayweather is fighting Logan Paul in an exhibition fight on February 20th. There's a lot to unpack in this one. For many reasons, mostly because I think a lot of people knew that this was going to happen. I don't think we thought that it was going to be Logan Paul. I think we probably thought it was going to be Jake Paul. But I think that kind of, stopped itself at some point. Now, I'm not going to say much about Nate Robinson versus Jake Paul, only because there's nothing really for me to say that hasn't been said already. That's just the way that I kind of look at it. But I think ultimately, when I look at, just these exhibition style fights and the fact that you have so many people who are lining up to watch these things, it presents a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to the sport of boxing. We want our sport to be taken seriously, but also at the same time, the sport is so much of a niche sport that there's so many people who've pretty much figured out that the way that you make money is always through shock value, and the only way you're going to make money, at least bring more eyes to the sport and make a ton of money here, is by having these types of exhibitions or comical fights. I'm not a fan of it. I don't really spend too much time watching it. But I decided to drop this video mostly because I think there's a lot more, beneath the surface to it. And I'm going to go into those things. So, of course, you kind of have to do your little tail of the tape. And I'm not going to do a full extension of that. But I need for a lot of people to, not necessarily dial down, their hatred for what this fight looks like. But I think they also need to look a little bit deeper because there is a specific reason why this fight is taking place. And it has absolutely nothing to do with boxing. So I'll jump into that. So when you look at Logan Paul, he has made the bulk load of his success through YouTube. He's one of that first batch of YouTube channels who got so much interest, got a ton of followers, millions of followers, was able to just make money through ad revenue, and he made the bulk load of his fortune that way. But for, like with most people, you kind of have to keep continuing to give the masses more and more and more. And for many people, that eventually involves stepping over the line and doing something that maybe you're not like interested in doing. And eventually, Logan Paul found himself in a position where his channel and the content that he was putting out was very fucked up because of some of the things that he was doing. And I'm not going to jump too much into it, but he was doing a lot of stupid things, and what made matters worse is he was doubling down on it until like it started to affect the way that he was able to make money, and then he started to take a back seat. And that always tends to be the thing with people who enjoy making money, but if they start to see that that money starts to dry up because of their own actions, they tend to pivot, kind of, renege their position and try to figure out what can they get away with. And for Logan Paul, as you start to see his credibility and what he was doing on YouTube kind of diminish, he started to beef with other people. And it kind of led him into this boxing fight against another YouTuber named KSI, in which both these guys, I think they fought twice. I believe, yeah, I think they fought twice. Um, and I think the first fight wasn't like a serious a serious fight that wasn't sanctioned, but they went ahead and sanctioned this second fight. And of course, Logan Paul lost the fight, but it was to me it was kind of weird. I thought that this would just be like a thing in the past and it just wouldn't happen again. But when they started to like bring up the rumors about Floyd potentially wanting to fight one of the Paul brothers, and I really don't pay much attention to it because Floyd Mayweather is a retired fighter. Anything that he does at this point that involves boxing doesn't really, I don't really care much for it, to be honest. But within like this last year, I think I know why Logan Paul has been aggressive with pushing this route. And I've also pulled like a lot of like detail in terms of what you're seeing in front of you in terms of the screenshots and X, Y, and Z. But I think the biggest thing that you have to like pay attention to when it comes to Logan Paul, especially when you look at a lot of things as far as economics and everything, for him to fight Floyd Mayweather is strictly about money. And the big reason why is because I believe it was last year was when him and his brother were no longer in the top 10 in terms of YouTubers who had made significant amount of money. And this has a lot to do with YouTube moving into an area in which it's more purely based on content creation slash reaction slash people watching things and giving their responses, which has kind of been where YouTube has moved into. More people tend to have more reaction channels than physically creating content, which nowadays would definitely pivot people away from the content that the Paul brothers would put out and put it in, and more people will watch other people react to things that they see on YouTube. So I think that's one of the big things that a lot of you got to pay attention to is both these brothers, they're not making as much money as they used to in the past. So they're looking for ways to kind of, branch out and make more money. And obviously this is a golden opportunity because you're fighting Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, of course, is the richest fighter that we've ever had in the sport. And even though right now he's retired, he's essentially going to be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame coming up next year. And he's just been taking exhibition fights for, easy money. He fought that Japanese kickboxer who didn't even last a round. Of course, they sanctioned his Conor McGregor fight, which none of us enjoyed in terms of the fact that they sanctioned it. But it was a fight that a lot of people got into, and it was always funny to kind of go back and forth with it. But when you look at the flip side of the coin, this isn't like a sanctioned fight, so I don't care much for it. But I do have to, talk about, why is Floyd Mayweather, he himself, taking this fight? You would think that a guy who has made as much money as Floyd Mayweather wouldn't need to take this fight. And really, when you look at it, there's only one sole reason why Floyd Mayweather is taking this fight. And it's the fact that Floyd Mayweather, and I believe this, and this is only my opinion. I am not, saying that this is the opinion or this is factual. This is just my opinion. Floyd Mayweather really wants to be part of that billionaire athlete club. And I think right now he's sitting a little short of about $50 to $60 million from hitting that. And this is the type of fight that Floyd Mayweather could potentially break that threshold. And what I mean by billionaire athlete club, I'm not talking about a guy who is making his money through other means of revenue. I'm talking about a guy who's made at least 90% of his fortune competing. And when you look at that list of fighters, or I should say athletes worldwide, If Floyd is to take this fight, make that $1 billion or cross that threshold, he would be only the 4th athlete worldwide in order to hit that threshold. He would also be the 3rd American to hit that threshold. And to give you even more of to give you more of an idea how exclusive this is, he'd be only the 2nd African American or Black American to do so, and he would be the only person to do it largely through competition. In terms of how you kind of dwindle it down. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, who are the rest of the individuals that are on this list? I believe there's one guy who's from Romania who is part of tennis and hockey, who is, I believe, worth at this point, I think, $2 billion. Yeah. Of course, the top person is Vince McMahon, who has built the WWE into what it is today. Vince is worth, I believe, $2.2 billion. And then, of course, you have Michael Jordan, who's worth $1.6 billion. And this, of course, is just people, they've analyzed all the public information around these people in order to come up with a dollar amount that values them in terms of a currency. And Floyd is sitting roughly at about $915 to $940 million. So a fight like this pushes Floyd over that threshold. And for him, I think this is why he's been taking these exhibition fights, is because I think for him, and everybody knows about Floyd Mayweather and his ego is, completely controlled by the value of money itself. So for him, if he has the opportunity to become the first athlete who has made the majority of his money through competition and to cross the billionaire threshold, that's something that he, of course, wants the bragging rights for. And of course, that will also mean that he will be on the same sort of tier monetary value-wise as a Michael Jordan and a Vince McMahon, which would be only 3 Americans in terms of, competition sports that have hit that threshold. Do I think Floyd would be the last person to do it? No, but I think Floyd wants to take this because I don't think he wants anybody else largely behind him to kind of take that, from him. And what I mean by that is you've got a ton of guys, especially now in sports, who are making a shit ton of money in terms of overall value. You have, guys like Patrick Mahomes, who, if he hits all the incentives of his contract, can make $500 million as an NFL player. And then, of course, he has the opportunity to, at the end of those 10 years, in which I think Patrick Mahomes would be something like 35, he's like 35, where he would be able to get another 3 or 4 years. And nobody knows where the NFL salary cap will be by then, but you would have to assume that, $200 million contracts in the next 10 years would be something of a norm. So that would put a Patrick Mahomes at a $750 million, and maybe he has a large incentive package that crosses that threshold. You look at, guys like LeBron James, who has a $1 billion Nike deal for a lifetime, but he hasn't crossed that threshold yet. He's not taken a large NBA salary. When you look at his salary over his career, he's often tend to not, take the very top dollar. But a guy like LeBron James has made a ton of money using basketball and can eventually cross that threshold. But for Floyd Mayweather, this is an opportunity for him to cross the threshold from a competitor side and to be the only person in his class to do so. So I often got to tell people a couple of different things to look out for. Well, first part is this is a joke fight. You've got a guy who is a master boxer and somebody who's been fighting since he could barely stand as a child versus a guy who is still kind of pretty much learning how to fight. So I have low expectations for this fight, and you should too. I think it'll be interesting watching Floyd beat up a guy who's 40 pounds heavier than him. It's not going to be much different from watching him in his sparring sessions, because that's what he normally tends to do in his sparring sessions. The odds right now are kind of sickening. They've got Floyd at minus 6,000. So if you wanted to make $100 on Floyd Mayweather, you would have to bet roughly $6,000. I believe if you wanted to make money off of Logan Paul, you would have to, if you bet $100 and you won, you'd win $1,700. But yeah, I think this is a joke fight for the most part. Now, when I look at things such as, Black America, which is like a huge thing, well, a lot of black people, I want to say it's like 80-20. 80% of us really don't care much for Floyd Mayweather, while the other 20 tends to be hyper influenced by Floyd Mayweather. And I often tell people a lot of times that Floyd Mayweather isn't what I call a role model for Black America. I don't consider him to be somebody that I would tell young Black Americans to strive to be like. I think if I were to strip away the qualities of Floyd Mayweather, I think the only thing that I find admirable about him, well, the two things I would say are admirable about him are his dedication to his work and his craft, which is second to none. Um, and the way that he's often at times been able to take care of the close individuals around him. Black men tend to get a bad rep, even though it's such a small percentage of them, for not taking care of their children and their families and having children with different women. And you tend to find a larger statistic around that with other races, but for black men, we are tend to put on a huge magnifying glass. But Floyd Mayweather isn't that type of person. Floyd has always been somebody who's taken care of all his children, even the ones that are really not good at making good decisions. So I think when it comes to Black America, yes, largely a lot of them are going to jump behind Floyd Mayweather and root for him in this fight, mostly because, number one, Logan Paul is not American, and number two, Logan Paul is white. And yes, race does drive a lot of things. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of black people who will get behind Floyd Mayweather, very similarly to how they got behind Floyd when he fought Conor McGregor. And last but not least, this is simply just an easy payday for Floyd. It's a way for him to kind of get to that $1 billion club. And for a guy like him, who I think a lot of people have been really praying for him to get tax issues, I think you're going to have to pray a little bit harder. But that's just me. So those are my thoughts on this Mayweather-Logan Paul fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about this video. I'm going to try to, do a couple more videos this week as some news kind of rolls out. I didn't want to talk too much about Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. I just don't think I have the energy for it. But if there's a topic that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section.